Today is Wednesday, Vov Shvat Tavshin Ayin Gimel. We are in Teiras Menachem Sefer Mamar Tavshin Yud Aleph Tavshin Yud Beis, at the end of the Mamar of Vayomer Yehonoson Mochor Chodesh of Shabbos Pashas Achrei Mamar Vayomer Erev Rosh Chodesh Shiur Tavshin Yud Aleph. We are in the middle, or just at the end of learning the explanation that Rebbe gives in the conversation that Yehonoson and David had, where Yehonoson says to David, Mochor Chodesh, tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, and you will be remembered or counted, and your place will be vacant at the meal of Shaul HaMelech. And they were discussing whether or not Shaul HaMelech is so upset with David that it might be dangerous for him to return, or it's all right for him to come back. And in order to establish that, they made a sign that Yehonoson will be present at that meal. His father is going to say, "What happened to David? Where is he?" He's going to tell him that he went to his family in Beis Lechem to celebrate the annual or the regular offerings that they bring as a family. And depending on Shaul's reaction, which Yehonoson will convey to him in code, to David will know whether he should come back or not. And the code that he gave him was that he would, obviously couldn't do it openly, he had to do it covertly. So he said, "I'll go with my servant, and I will fire some arrows. If I say to my servant, fetch me the arrow, it's between me and you, the arrow is between me and you, then you should know that everything is fine, you can come back. If I say to my David will hear. In other words, he'll be hiding at a certain spot, and that's where he's going to fire the arrows. And if he says it's between me and you, if he says to a servant it's between me and you, in the range, then you know everything is fine, you can come back. And if I say to my servant, the arrow is from you and beyond you, that's a sign for you, David, that you better leave. There's a problem." The Rebbe explained in Avodas Hashem that actually what David was saying to Yehonoson, he was discussing what's known as Avodas HaBirurim, the process of refinement, which is the purpose, the mission that every neshama has as it comes down into this world, is to engage in this Avodah known as Avodas HaBirurim, the process serving Hashem through refinement. That means through engaging with physicality, with material matters, with one's environment, and to identify the sparks of Kedusha, of holiness, that are embedded within that environment, and to lift them back up to their source. Kabbalistically speaking, this is the idea of the sparks, the holy sparks, quote unquote, that fell from Olam HaTohu, from the world of chaos, at a time when what occurred was Shviras HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels.
Is that the stuff from the eyes?
Sorry?
Is that the stuff, the things that come out of the eyes? It's like
The rays that come out of the eyes.
they're like things that come out of the eyes. It's got something to do with Yaakov and the sheep as well. Birurim, Nikudim, and
That's Vrudim.
yeah, right.
Well, there are worlds which are known as Elam and Akudim. You're right, quite right. But those are also realms that refer to Kabbalah. Generally speaking, we're talking about Olam HaTohu, the world of chaos, from where the divine lights, the celestial lights of Hashem's divine attributes, the spheres, were so powerful that the vessels of the spheres, the vessels of the attributes, couldn't contain them, and they sort of broke apart, notionally speaking. And the sparks embedded within those kelim, in those vessels, splattered all over the place and fell very far or very low, meaning they fell into places which need lifting back up to Kedusha. That is the process that a person engages in throughout his life. Everybody has their mission and their sparks that they need to lift and refine. So David HaMelech was saying to Yehonoson, Mochor Chodesh. Mochor refers to Mashiach's times. As the Talmud says, Hayoim la'asayisam, today we do, Mochor l'kabel scharam, and tomorrow we receive the reward. When do we receive the reward? When Mashiach comes. So Mochor Chodesh, tomorrow is Chodesh, and Chodesh is also the idea of connecting it to the Geula, because as we say in the bracha of Kiddush HaChodesh, of the sanctification of the moon, we say, Yehonoson Mochor, we daven to Hashem that the light of the moon should be like the light of the sun, as it was before it was diminished at the time of creation. When will that be again? When Mashiach comes. the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun. So this is all a metaphor, so to speak, for the Aveda. Yehonoson says to David, tomorrow is the Geula, meaning to say in the future time Mashiach will come. Now is the time that we have to serve Hashem, do Avedas HaBirurim, serve Hashem through this process of refinement. So I will go and find out from Shaul HaMelech, King Saul, who represented the potential for the actualization and fulfillment and completion of the process of Avedas HaBirurim. Because as it says, Shaul HaMelech was there were three mitzvahs that the Jews were commanded when they came into Eretz Yisrael. One was to appoint a king, the other one was to wipe out the seed of Amalek, and the third was to build the Beis HaMikdash. The first two were almost fulfilled in Shaul. The first one was fulfilled in Shaul. He was the first Jewish king. The second one, he had a commandment from Shmuel HaNavi, from Hashem via Shmuel HaNavi, to wipe out the seed of Amalek, but unfortunately he did not complete the job. Had he completed the job, we would have moved on to the third, which is to build the Beis HaMikdash. So Shaul HaMelech epitomized the idea of completing the process of refinement. So David HaMelech said, Yehonoson said, I'm going to check with Shaul, where are we up to in this process of refinement of serving Hashem? And that's when he spoke about the arrows. If the arrow is from between me and my servant, that means it's completed. We've gone the full distance, the full range. If it's beyond my servant, it means that we've still got Avedas HaBirurim to do. Carry on, David. Continue doing your Avedas HaBirurim, your process of refinement. Serving Hashem through the process of refinement. And don't be afraid. Ki Hashem shlachacha. God is the one that sends you to do this process of refinement, to engage with your environment, and that's why we have the koyach to do that. What's the idea of the arrow? That's what we're learning now. The bow and arrow. The bow and arrow is something when you pull the bow, the more taut you pull it, the lower you pull the string of the bow, the further the arrow will fly. That's the idea that the lower the elements that one engages with in Avodas Hashem, the higher that reaches. That's more or less what we've learned until now. What is the idea of the arrow?
How does that connect with what festival is it when they go and they play, the kids play with babies?
That's Lag Vayomer.
Lag Vayomer.
There is a slight connection, but let's not get, we're going to get carried away. I'll just say one word. Lag Vayomer, the Sfira of Lag Vayomer, you know, in the 7 weeks between Pesach and Shavuos, we count the Sfiras Vayomer. Lag Vayomer is Hoid Shebahoid. Sfiras HaHoid represents the end of the process of Birur. And the two spheres which follow are just the actualization of that. But once you've hit Hoid, you've already gone more, it's almost a foregone conclusion, so to speak, that everything else will fall into place. So in a sense, I guess, possibly, it might be the connection, because that is the idea of the culmination of the bitter, of the refinement. But let's not get carried away into that at the moment. When we get to the Mamorim of Lag Vayomer, perhaps the Rebbe will talk about that. I'm not sure. We have a Mamar of Lag Vayomer here. The next Mamar, actually. Okay, so what's the idea of the bow and arrow? So we know what the arrow is. That's the idea of the birurim. What's the bow? Page Ayin Beis, page 72. 8 lines from the bottom. The line starts with the word chulu as an abbreviated word, and we say v'hasimin al zeh haya in akeshes dafke. What was the sign that Yehonoson was giving to David concerning whether or not the birurim, the refinement process was concluded, was through this idea of the bow. What's this? What's the concept behind this? It's brought in the Zohar. Leititzpi leragle de Mashiach. Do not wait for the feet of Mashiach. Ad diyechzi haikeshes ba'alma, until you will see this rainbow in the world, miskashta begavne nehirin, becoming beautified with bright lights, bright colors. Ukedain, and when you see this, tzapi leila Mashiach, wait for Mashiach. When you see rainbows with very bright colors, you will know you should wait for what? For Mashiach. The Rebbe says it would seem to be not understandable. Why? As we learned in Bereshis, in Genesis, after the Mabel, after the flood, what does Hashem say? Is Kashti Nosati Bo'onon, right? I made a rainbow for what purpose? So I should remind myself not to destroy the world, or as a memory, as a sign, not to destroy the world. So the rainbow is a sign of the covenant, so that there should not be another flood. When do you need a flood? When do you need a sign? When is this sign necessary? The necessity for this sign is an undesirable phenomenon. In other words, it would seem that something is out of order, and in order not to bring another flood, there is a rainbow, which reminds Hashem that what? That He made a covenant not to bring another flood. So it's not a positive phenomenon, a rainbow. That's why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, that might be another connection, Eddie. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, that says in the Talmud Yerushalmi, in the Jerusalem Talmud, that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, when he was quoting his special qualities, he says, in my lifetime, not a single time did a rainbow appear. What does that mean? That his chus, his merit, was so powerful that protected the world. And there was no need for a rainbow to remind Hashem that what? That He shouldn't bring a flood. Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's chus protected the world. So what do we see from here? That a rainbow is something negative. So therefore, what's the connection between the appearance of rainbows and waiting for the feet of Mashiach? It seems to be contradictory. Who says the Rebbe, however, the explanation is Shadiyuk who actually, if you look at the phrase carefully, there is a actual specific choice of words. Who be'inyan hakeshes begavnin behirin dafke. We're not talking about a regular rainbow. We're talking about a rainbow with very bright colors. Bright colors. What is the concept of a rainbow with very bright colors? As the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, explains, Shehu Inyan, that Kabbalistically speaking, a rainbow with very bright lights, very bright colors, Hu Inyan Gilui Pnimius Atik, this is the revelation of a level known as Pnimius Atik, the inner dimension of the higher aspect of Keser. Okay? In the order of the spheres, we have usually the 10 spheres from Chachma through to Malchus. Beyond, those are the spheres, the attributes that manifest themselves in a pneumius way, in an internal way, in the realm that they inhabit, or in the person. We're talking about the koiches hanefesh, the powers of the soul as they inhabit the person internally, the intellect, the emotions, the things that cause the person to act, right? Those are things that operate internally. They have a specific place within the anatomy of the person where they dwell, and they also operate internally. Then you have certain forces in spheres, certain attributes that hover beyond they're beyond the realm. They're associated with the realm, but they are beyond the realm that they inhabit. They're too powerful to inhabit the realm internally. So they hover, they surround them. Generally, that's known as Keser, the crown, much like a crown that surrounds the head. Keser, however, has two parts to it. The outer aspect of Keser, which is known as Arich Anpin, and the inner aspect of Keser, which is known as Atik Yomin. Each one of those, in turn, also have a Pnimius and a Chatzenius, an external dimension and an internal dimension. So, Atik Yomin, the higher aspect of Keser, has a Chatzenius Atik and a Pnimius Atik. The outer aspect of Atik and the inner aspect of Atik. So the Tzemach Tzedek explains that a bright colored rainbow, which is associated with Mashiach, signifies the revelation of the inner aspect of Atik, of the higher part of Keser. Which, in other words, this is a very, very great revelation of godliness. In the terminology that we use throughout the Maimesh, when this aspect of Keser, of Atik, when the previous Atik is revealed, that causes the light itself to become illuminated. Darkness becomes light. Shizehu, how does that happen? How do the colors of the rainbow happen? This is the idea of the clouds themselves causing the multitude of colors in the rainbow. Similar to the idea of what? Of the night itself, the dark itself becoming illuminated. Bedugmas hagili de lasid lavei. In this way, it is similar to the revelations of the time to come. Shalayla kayem yoyer, when night itself will become light, which is the theme that we discussed throughout the whole Mamar.
They just get it from what the Rashbi said. You are getting this from Chumash about the rainbow.
That what?
About it's a bright, it's not an ordinary rainbow. It's a bright rainbow.
This is Zohar. It's a quote from the Zohar.
Right.
Wait for the feet of Mashiach when you see the world becoming beautified with a rainbow of bright colors. Begavni nihirin. That's a direct quote from the Zohar. Right? So what's the idea? The idea is that the darkness itself becomes light. And as we discussed it in the Mamar throughout, that what? That is the uniqueness of the time of Mashiach. Even over and above what happened when the Jews left Egypt. Because although over there also it was light at night, however there it was as a result of something outside of it. Over here we're talking about the darkness itself causing the illumination. The clouds causing the brightness of these colors. And therefore, because we're talking about a time when you'll have this tremendous revelation of the inner aspect of the Pnimius, the Gili, the revelation of Pnimius Atik. And therefore, when this rainbow appears with bright colors, Azai then wait for the feet of Mashiach. However, says the Rebbe, we're still not talking about Mashiach. We're talking about waiting for the feet of Mashiach. What's the emphasis? However, again over here, the choice of the accurate choice of words is wait for the feet of Mashiach. Why? Because what is the idea of Mashiach? Ultimately, what are we talking about? Yes, the darkness turning to light, but not as a result of any outside influences, but rather through the revelation of the source of the darkness itself. Right? If you remember, we learned the expression that Rabbi used is Gili Helam Atzmi, when the essential concealment of Hashem Himself, the ayin of the Yesh Amiti. The Yesh of the Yesh Amiti. Right? When Hashem Himself becomes revealed. That is Mashiach. That's the idea of the revelation of Mashiach, means that the darkness itself becomes light and becomes illuminated from its own perspective, because of its own vantage point, from within itself. It reveals what it truly is, that it's not really darkness, it's really an expression of what? Of Hashem's very essence. However, when we talk about the rainbow with bright lights, why indeed do you have these bright colors? Yes, of course it's because of the intervention of the clouds, but it's because the sun is also shining very powerfully. So there is an outside influence which causes this bright colored rainbow. Therefore, it's merely the feet of Mashiach. Mashiach himself signifies the idea of the darkness itself, revealing that really and truly it is what? It's a manifestation and a revelation of what? Of Hashem's very essence.
When you talk about the light, are you talking about the light of the first day or the fourth day? The light of Mashiach.
Well, first of all, when we talk about the light of Mashiach, we're talking about a revelation. We're using light more as a metaphor, even though these phenomena will be physically, right? The moon will become as powerful as the sun, and so on and so forth. But embedded within it is the idea that you're talking about a revelation of a great spiritual revelation, godly revelation. When we talk about specifically, in answer to your question, we're talking about the light of the first day, about which it is told that Hashem concealed that. Hashem took that and concealed that. He concealed it for the time to come. Okay? So that would be, if you want to get technical, we're talking about the light of the first day. But we're talking in Ruchnius, in the spiritual sense, we're talking about what? The revelations of the very highest dimensions of godliness, to the extent of the revelation of God Himself. Umisayim. Now getting back to the narrative, to the discussion between Yehonoson and David, what happens at the end? Umisayim, after David and Yehonoson after he fired those arrows, and it was recognized that the process hasn't yet concluded, the Messiah, and David had to leave. So the narrative concludes, Vayishku ish Esrei they kissed each other, Vayivku ish Esrei and they cried, they both cried, Ad David Higdil, until David exceeded in his crying. David cried more than Yehonoson. What does that mean? What's the idea behind this? That he exceeded, not only in the crying, David accomplished something more than Yehonoson. What does that mean spiritually? Yehonoson the son of Shaul, spiritually speaking, is the idea of comprehension. Shaul was from a place called Rechevis Anar, where the rivers are wide. Nahar, spiritually, according to the Kabbalah, is Bechinas Bina, the level of Bina. Understanding. Sorry?
Wasn't the Evan or
Not Shaul, that was Avram. Avram was Chochmah, you're right. But he was Nahar. Nahar is the idea of Bina, which is what? Understanding, which means comprehension, taking things internally, taking things in a manifest way. David is the idea that he established the yoke of Torah, the Ulishal Tshuva, and the yoke of Teshuvah, which is Kabbalah's El Dafka. Torah is Chachma, which is beyond Bina. And even beyond that is Kabbalah's El. Tshuva. What's Tshuva? Returning. How do you return? Accepting, practically speaking. One accepts the yoke of heaven. But what is the idea of Tshuva? As we discussed throughout this whole Maimer, that Tshuva reaches into the very highest realms of godliness, to the extent that it touches Hashem himself. So that's the idea of David. David is, spiritually speaking, in the Sfiris, is higher than Yehonoson. This is the idea of, quote, until David exceeded Yehonoson. What does that mean in terms of the narrative as we're discussing it here? Until, in other words, David continued the process of birurim, of refinement, until David will accomplish Higdil. What does Higdil mean? Until he will accomplish the revelation of the level known as Higdil v'hifli Hashem la'avai alasas baretz. God has exceeded and shown great wonders in the earth. When will that be? What does that mean? In the terminology that we use all the way through the Maimer, Gilia Hela Ma'atzmi, this refers to the essential, the revelation of God's essential concealment, which means the revelation of God himself. When will that be? Speedily in our days, when Mashiach will come. This is the conclusion of this Maimer. I'm happy to tell you that today is we just finished our 100th Shiur since we started, and please God, tomorrow we will start the Maimer of Lag Baimer.